Testing, testing.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Cool. Let's go.
What a week it has been.
Truly. I'm Alex.
And I'm Emily, and welcome to What a Week.
You want it, we got it. We're bringing you the top news and pop culture stories you need to be in the know.
Let's get started.
So a lot happened this week, and given everything that happened, we felt it was important to just focus on two stories this week. Breonna Taylor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. First, we're going to talk about the charges, or lack thereof, that happened this week surrounding the police officers who killed Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was a 26-year-old Black woman who lived in Louisville. She worked as an EMT. She was a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a girlfriend, and a friend. Her friends said she changed their lives for the better by living the Bree way. Breonna Taylor loved empowering and supporting the people around her. Her motto in life was all you can do every day is wake, pray, and slay. Her best friend Elena said, if you ever needed someone to boost your confidence, that was Bree. Her mom told Teen Vogue, Breonna always smiled. I can remember being mad at her and she would be smiling. According to the New York Times, the night before her death, Breonna Taylor had just done 4 overnight shifts at the hospital. She and her boyfriend Kenneth Walker planned a date night. They had dinner, then they went to her apartment for a movie. All over her apartment were post-it notes of goals she had for the year. She had just bought a car. Next on her list was to buy a new home and to try for a baby with her boyfriend. They had the name picked out and everything. They fell asleep together just after midnight on March 13th, with the movie still playing. The last thing she said was turn off the TV, he said in an interview. Police officers entered her home shortly after they fell asleep. Their names are Jonathan Mattingly, Brett Hankison, and Miles Cosgrove. They entered her home on a no-knock warrant, searching for a suspect who didn't even live there. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, then shot his gun because he thought they were intruders. Officers responded by shooting 32 shots back. Breonna Taylor was struck 5 times. This happened back in March. This week, a grand jury charged no one for the death of Breonna Taylor. In September, Louisville officials paid Breonna Taylor's family $12 million to settle a wrongful death lawsuit. They know what they did, but Breonna Taylor didn't get the justice that she deserved. Now, I want to read this tweet from @thisblee on Twitter. She was used for everything. Used to promote everything. Used to make people look good and socially conscious. Used to promote parties. Used for memes. Used as an example. Used and used and used. And even with all of this, she didn't get the one thing she needed. Justice.
It's really frustrating. I think it's, obviously it's disappointing. That goes without saying. I think you'd be soulless to not be disappointed by that. But part of me is like, it's so expected. And that's what's just so fucked up about the justice system in this country for people of color. If this were, I'm going to use you as an example because you're white. If this was you, all 3 of those officers would have been arrested. They would have lost their jobs. It wouldn't have even been a thing. It would have been like, duh. But because it was a person of color, they were not held accountable one bit. Essentially, the walls in her apartment got more justice than she did. And she's a living human being who did nothing wrong. She had her future, her life ahead of her. She did nothing wrong, and this happened to her. And, you know, the tweet you read out loud, it's so true. I think, you know, the Black Lives Movement is obviously great what they're doing, but it's so true. Like, you have these kind of figureheads that are really symbolic and are used to push the movement forward, but at the end of the day, it's really annoying and frustrating when they don't get justice. It's like all the Instagram posts, everything you say is not going to get her justice. It's not going to bring her back.
I know. That's the thing. Justice would have truly been none of this happening in the first place. It's absolutely infuriating, and just, I mean, her name's everywhere. Like, it's like that tweet said, literally everyone knows who Breonna Taylor is, but, like, it's just like her family and her friends knew who she was, but beyond just someone who was murdered at the hands of police. And it's just like, I don't know, a life was lost, and it's absolutely awful.
Yes, and I really appreciate you, like, actually talking about her as a person, because you're so right. I feel like, coming from someone who used to work in media, it's, you know, you have time to fill, and you don't have too much time to give to one specific story, so sometimes you'll cover a little bit about the person on day one, and then the next day you kind of do follow-ups about the charges, and I think that is an issue. I think you should always remember the person, because at the end of the day, this is a person, and they deserve to be remembered, not just as the person who got shot by police, another person who got shot and killed by police. They deserve to be remembered for everything they did, for their aspirations, for the person they wanted to be, and not just as a name.
I know, like, all the reports of, like, go kind of exploring who she was as a person, like, she kept telling family and friends, like, this was her year. And that's, like, the part that's most heartbreaking to me, because it could have been her year. It could have been the next, I don't know, 50 plus years could have been her years, but it was taken away from her.
Well, we're going to move on. The United States lost an icon and pioneer for women's rights when Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died from pancreatic cancer on September 18th. She was 87. She was nominated to the Supreme Court by Bill Clinton in 1993 and was the second woman appointed to the court, where she served 27 years. RBG was a legal, cultural, and feminist icon in the 80s and coined the nickname Notorious RBG for her fierce commitment in ensuring equality for women and people of color. To say the least, RBG was a badass, and so we quickly wanted to point out some of the many things that she did to make her so damn extraordinary. First off, she studied law at Harvard in the 50s after she had her first child. Her daughter was 1 when she started school at Harvard. And while she was at Harvard, she was one of 9 women in the class of 500 students, and she became the first member of the Harvard Law Review. She was Columbia Law School's first female tenured professor. In the 70s, she litigated sex discrimination cases for the American Civil Liberties Union and was an instrumental member and person in launching the ACLU's Women's Rights Project in 1973. In 1996, the United States versus Virginia case, she wrote the majority opinion that it is unconstitutional for schools funded by taxpayer dollars to bar women. So she essentially made it easier for women to get into public schools. She paved the way for the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which allowed women to apply for credit cards and mortgages without a male cosigner. She was a crucial vote on the current court to keep Roe v. Wade. She pushed to protect pregnant women in the workplace because she was discriminated as a pregnant woman when she was working. She was also a key vote in granting same-sex marriages.
I mean, it's crazy when, like, someone in that, like, light, like, in politics or in legal or whatever, that system, like, becomes a pop culture icon, right? Because, like, a lot of times, I mean, you respect people in those roles, but you don't necessarily, like, look up to them. And, like, this is someone who paved the way for so many, not just people in roles like that, but paved the way just for women and people in the LGBTQ plus community just in general. Like, I mean, her impact is huge.
Yes, I agree. And it's also incredible because she she was pretty progressive all the way. I mean, she was married, but her husband was the cook because she's a notorious terrible cook. And like they moved to Washington because she got a great job opportunity. Like even back then at those times, like he wasn't like, well, I'm the man. Like I need to be doing this and like whatever. Like he supported her. And it's just crazy how like she appeals to young people. And I feel like even like kids that are 16 or like 18 or younger than us like know who she is. And it's not just because of the shirts that have like Notorious RBG on them with a crown. It's because she is woke and she like just is so relatable. And it's like, I agree to your point, a lot of people don't know who's even on the Supreme Court. They don't know the 9 justices, but everyone knows Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
1,000%. I mean, I fall in that category. I couldn't name all 9, but I could name Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you know? So it's a huge loss. And just, I mean, the impact, which we'll of course get into a little bit, just the impact of her having to be replaced is going to be absolutely insane. But it's true. I mean, absolute icon. It's sad. But one thing I did want to say, because I thought this was just like the sweetest thing ever, I saw like the last letter that like her husband wrote her before he died, because I think he died back in 2010, and it was just like, I'm so proud of you, like to watch you reach the top of the legal system has been nothing but like incredibly like heartwarming or something. And I'm just like, that's amazing, because obviously like she paved the way. She was one of, like you said, one of only a certain number of women who was even in her 500 person class. And it's just like one of 9. And it's just like, you often see men in heterosexual relationships with women kind of there's a weird power dynamic. And especially I can imagine back then. So just knowing her husband was so supportive, it's just like, I love that. Like, I don't know, I love relationships and I loved seeing that.
Since her passing, Ginsburg became the first woman and the first Jewish person to lie in the state in the U.S. Capitol. Now her death has shaken up the country, not just because we lost a hero, but because we lost her so close to the election. Now there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court with less than 40 days until November 3rd, which means President Trump has the opportunity to appoint his 3rd judge to the nation's highest court. He would likely replace her with a conservative pick and attempt to solidify a conservative majority on the Supreme Court for decades. Just before she died, RBG told her granddaughter this, quote, "My most reverent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed." Now, it normally takes 70 days for a Supreme Court nominee to be vetted and confirmed. Whether or not President Trump should appoint a new justice has been a hot question since RBG's passing. To talk about it some more, we have our first guest on the show, our good friend and journalist, Jamie Ballard.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Emily. Hi, Alex. Thank you guys so much for having me on. This is really exciting.
We're so excited.
I know, I'm really excited right now.
So Jamie works at YouGov, a market research company. So Jamie, you guys just did a study that says 51% of registered voters say Trump should not appoint a Supreme Court justice before the presidential inauguration, and most voters oppose the Republican plan to confirm Supreme Court pick before the election. Can you explain the study a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. So this study was done, this poll was done on Saturday, kind of very shortly after the announcement that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died. So we got out there and we decided to poll, sort of asking people about what they thought should happen next. So as you said, 51% of registered voters said no when asked, do you think President Donald Trump should appoint a new Supreme Court justice to fill a seat left vacant by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg before the presidential inauguration in January 2021? So what we're seeing is that about half of Americans don't think that he should be the one to appoint a justice unless he's reelected necessarily. 42% do think he should. So that's not insignificant necessarily, right? That's 42% of registered voters think that he should be the one to appoint a new Supreme Court justice. There's kind of some predicted partisan splits with this. 84% of Democrats think that he should not be the one to do this. 86% of Republicans think that he should. But then when we look to numbers about the Senate, we asked if President Donald Trump appoints a new Supreme Court justice before the presidential inauguration, do you think the Senate should confirm the nominee? And with that, we see kind of a more even split. 45% say that the Senate should confirm the nominee if that happens. 48% say that they should not. And this was It was a quick poll of 1,200 registered voters surveyed via YouGov Direct.
So what exactly does this data tell us?
This basically tells us, so this is a snapshot of kind of like right after the news broke, right? So this is like the first thing that people were thinking. It tells us that there's not necessarily consensus either way, right? Because it's only 51%. So that means that there's 42% who disagree and then 7% who just aren't sure at this point. This might be one that you would want to look at if we polled again, like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just kind of as we get closer to the election to see if the sentiment is shifting. But what it tells us is that largely Americans, half of Americans, don't think that Trump should be the one to appoint a new Supreme Court justice.
And I was going to say, from my non-statistical mind, it didn't seem as extreme as I would have hoped personally. Is this data significant?
Yes, it is significant just because it's more of a snapshot than anything. So it's a snapshot of how people were feeling at this point in time.
Yeah.
Like I said, it kind of change. But we sort of saw similar sentiments reflected in another poll that we did with Yahoo News, in which 53% of Americans believe whichever candidate wins the 2020 election should nominate the justice. So that's also, right, that's still like kind of near that halfway mark. People aren't necessarily overwhelmingly thinking like Trump should do it or the next, the winner of the election should do it. Mm-hmm. What it tells you is that there's still a lot of questions out there.
Yeah, totally. And I'm assuming once Trump selects or says who the nominee is, it's going to change more, right? Because if people like the person he's nominating, it's going to be like, oh yeah, he should do it, opposed to people not liking that person.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Emily. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it definitely depends, because right now it's sort of an unknown. It could change. People who initially were thinking that Trump should be the one to nominate could be like, well, never mind. If he wants to nominate her, I don't think he should be the one to nominate, or vice versa.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Well,
awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. This was fun.
So Donald Trump has picked Amy Coney Barrett to replace her, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, on the Supreme Court. She's been a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals since Trump nominated her in 2017. Now let's get into her history a little bit. She believes, quote, life begins at conception. She has criticized the Affordable Care Act. I said that all wrong. Affordable Care Act. Her confirmation would threaten the health of millions of Americans. She has sided with employers who are accused of racial discrimination. She has consistently ruled in favor of the wealthy and powerful. She has intentionally and cruelly misgendered transgender people and has demonstrated hostility towards LGBTQ plus rights. She has supported expansive gun rights and voted in favor of the Trump administration's anti-immigration policies. If her confirmation is successful, this will be Trump's third Supreme Court pick.
Big sigh.
I mean, big sigh.
Some presidents don't get to pick one. The fact that he might pick 3 is just like mind-blowing. Also, I mentioned this earlier, but if he successfully picks her and she gets nominated and she gets a seat in the Supreme Court, it would be majority conservative. And like we mentioned before, these seats are appointed for life or until they retire. And it's very political, obviously. For instance, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of the last interviews she gave, she said, like, they're like, you're getting old. She was 87. Like, why aren't you going to retire? And she's like, well, at my age, I take it year by year. But a Democratic president nominated me in, and I would like to leave when a Democratic president is in office. And so obviously it's very political with like when people leave. And so once they have the majority, unless they die, like if they retire, they're going to retire during a Democratic or Republican president. So like, long story short, if this woman gets appointed, we will have a conservative Supreme Court for a long time, a very long time, probably for our lifetime, maybe. So it's just like crazy to me that this could happen. It's also crazy to me that people still think this way. Like, do I live in a bubble, or like, what?
I know. When we hear all this news, we're like, God, like, we say this every episode. We're like, what can we do? And that's the thing. It's a fucked up system. But as for right now, we have to kind of play the game. And the only way we can make a difference right now when it comes to the Supreme Court is by casting our votes on November 3rd, right? Election day on November 3rd. So make sure you're voting. That's all I can say. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen the next 40-ish days, but please vote on November 3rd. And that's how you can use your voice. And that's how we can make sure for the rest of our lifetime and generations to come, we hopefully did the right thing.
Exactly. And when you're like looking at the ballot, there's also obviously a lot of other things on the ballot. Something really interesting that I'm going to pull up in a second is something that Alex actually posted on your Instagram story, I believe.
Oh, was it from today, right now? I was mad this morning.
Oh, were you? I'm trying to find it. Do I not message you a lot? Oh, yeah, I do. I found it. Okay. Okay, so something I wanted to also mention while you're voting, some positions that have power over the police in your city. So, you know, obviously a lot of hot topics are going on in this election. Every election, I feel like people say this is the most important one of our lifetime, but this honestly could be, especially now that there's this spark of people wanting equality, police reform, the Supreme Justice seat is up for grabs. There's a lot at stake that can really impact us and our kids and our grandkids. So some elected positions that have power over the police in your city, district attorney. So they're the prosecutors that decide who to charge with what crimes. The sheriffs are the police chiefs. And those positions are voted in. State legislators, so obviously they can pass or amend laws and bills in the state. City council members are very important. So basically they pass all local laws that are specific to you and your city, obviously. And those are also appointed, and those are the people that actually have the most impact on your day-to-day life. So it's very important that you keep in mind when you're voting for that, and also obviously mayors. A tip I would do is when you're looking for voting and who you're going to vote for, if there's an incumbent, which means they've held office before, and they're look at how they responded to all of this. Did the sheriff, how did he respond to Breonna Taylor's death? How is he responding to the Supreme Court vacancy right now? Like, just look them up, research them. What did they say or what didn't they say? Silence says a lot. If they didn't say anything when Breonna Taylor died and to all the things that happened, George Floyd, etc., like, you know, that's something to keep in mind, because if they didn't say something, that probably means they didn't have anything good to say, or that they're not for the movement. And so, just my tip.
Yes, I fully agree. Fully agree.
Well, that does it for us, folks. Before we log off, we're just going to quickly say our good news of the week. Alex, do you have one?
Yes, so submitted by Mr. Jack Molmud. He said, I made some really good fried rice, and it's going to be my 3rd day in a row working out.
Woo!
I love the little wins. I really love them.
I do too. My best friend Kristen Rivas said she got an in-person job interview, and so she's super excited. Fingers crossed she gets the job. We're sending you positive vibes, Kristen.
Yay.
I also have a good story of the week. My good friend Albert, he turned 24, and so my best friend, his girlfriend, had like she bought a projector and did like a little movie night in the backyard. We roasted marshmallows. It was super cute. So
that's really nice. My highlight was probably, honestly, I'm going to say it. Love Island is my favorite show right now. I'm obsessed. Getting to watch it every night because it's on every single night has been my favorite part of quarantine.
I love that. Well, make sure you follow us on our social. You can search us up on YouTube, What a Week with Alex and Emily. Or you can follow us on the gram
at What a Week Show, and then on Twitter at What a Week Show _.
Yep, well, that does it for us. Make sure you send us your good stories of the week for next week, and we'll talk to you very soon. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.